All right, so Martin Bakole and F.A. Jagba fight to a 10-round majority draw. One judge had it 96-94, 6 rounds to 4 for F.A. Jagba. The other two judges had it 5 rounds apiece. So neither guy comes away with this fight with a loss. Let's talk about this fight. Let's talk about the background of this fight first. So go into this fight. Well, this fight was talked about for a while, and I made Bakoli firm favourite until he fought Joseph Parker in that farcical whole 24 hours notice thing. So going into this fight, I was a bit unsure. There was a lot of people who were picking FA Jagba not only to win this fight but to win it by knockout, and I definitely felt it was conceivable. And given how Bakoli only lost like what a little over 10 pounds or so thereabouts between the Parker fight now, and given the fact that he was in no shape in the Parker fight, it did make you kind of wonder, how serious did he take the training? Did they just focus on having him ring ready instead of actually taking the weight off? And Bakoli in the ring, there were put it like this, right? I thought that this fight was actually not a particularly difficult fight to score if you go and watch it. It was not a bad fight in terms of some of the fights we've had this weekend. This was one of the better fights, and it wasn't Ben Eubank. It was far from it, but that just shows what we've had to deal with this weekend in terms of what's been happening in the ring. In terms of the fight itself, I felt that early on, Ajagba was looking very sharp. Ajagba's 240 pounds of just solid athlete. Now, there's a lot of flaws there. He's very upright. Oh my God, F.A. Ajagba is so upright. It's crazy. He is very robotic in his approach, in every aspect in his approach in the ring. And I'll talk about his punch output later on as I get into the rounds, because that was something that happened in his loss to Frank Sanchez, his sole loss to Frank Sanchez, and it almost happened again here. Only difference is, well, it almost did. I'll talk more about it now in a sec. So early on, I felt that Ajagba was looking very, very sharp. He looked very, very sharp, especially in round number three. In round number three, he was able to land some short right hands on Martin Bakoli, who, going into this fight, I did wonder how he would take F.A. Ajagba's power, because Joseph Parker knocked out Martin Bakoli with one shot on the top of the head. And yes, that is a Bakoli who had no training and probably wasn't conditioned at that point to take, well, he probably hadn't taken a shot since he fought Anderson. So I can understand how that a shot, which maybe wouldn't have been the hardest shot you'd ever see a heavyweight take, had a big impact on him. And I thought to myself, right, chances are that was just a once off, most likely. Ajagba, you're going to want to be conditioned because he can punch. This guy is one of the bigger punchers in the division. He really is, especially with the right hand. Well, he landed some right hands. He landed some good, fast, short right hands on Martin Bakoli. And Bakoli took him. I'm sure they didn't tickle, but he did take them. And particularly in round number three, he took some shots from F.A. Ajagba in that round. And as the round progressed, he actually was able to come back in and actually pin Ajagba up against the ropes. Bakoli was doing what he always does. He was looking to come in, use the jab. He was throwing some uppercuts, which is one of his best shots, and he was going to Ajagba's body. The problem was, Bakoli, who was still, I want to say he's still about maybe nearly 2 stone overweight. I think Bakoli in the 270s is probably an ideal weight for him. Because he's weighing in excess of 30 pounds over what he should be weighing, his legs, his feet were very slow. You could see it, his feet, he was plodding a lot, and he just gave Ajagba so many opportunities in there. He really did. Although saying that, round number 4, he did dial it up a little bit. I felt he was starting to actually make Ajagba feel uncomfy in there. But Ajagba was able to rally. He was able to come back in rounds 5, 6, and 7. And you kind of got the impression, okay, Ajagba's comfy in this fight. Bakoli, it's too little training put into too little, time period. He's been out of shape. You got that impression that Bakoli was letting this fight go. That this fight should have been on paper a fight that he really should have won, but Bakoli was letting it slip for a variety of reasons. But then Ajagba in the later rounds, he gave those rounds up. He really did. He gave those rounds up. He gave rounds 8, 9, and 10 up, in my opinion. And when I said that he had reminiscence of his sole loss to Frank Sanchez, so when he fought Frank Sanchez, that was on the undercard of Fury versus Wilder, the trilogy fight. And they were one of the earlier fights on the show. Now, Sanchez boxed really well. He boxed really well, and he was able to drop F.A. Ajagba in that fight. But Ajagba's punch output just dropped. Like, it just dropped. Not because of fatigue, because he didn't look fatigued. He didn't look fatigued in here either. You know, this fight, which is a damning indictment on Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, this fight was a 10 rounder. They threw double the punch. They're heavyweights. So that just shows how bad those two fights were. But he didn't look fatigued in there. His just, I don't know, did he mentally check out or something? Because his punch output just dropped. Bakole was able to take those rounds, and he just looked like a fish out of water in those rounds. He really did. And again, I've seen him like that against Frank Sanchez. And I forget who was his cornerman that night, but he was, the night he fought Sanchez, he was like, what are you doing? You're giving this fight. And he was giving the fight. Well, yeah, I know he was dropped, but he was doing that prior to him getting dropped. And he did it again here. And I thought, oh, God, you are letting this guy get right back into it. And I think had Bakoli, again, had ideal preparation, as in no fight with Joseph Parker in February, you'd gone straight into camp, you were on it like a car bonnet. I think had he done that, and had he actually, but realistically, he should have been preparing and getting the weight off from Christmas, really. But had he done that, I think he would have been there for the taking. He wasn't, and the Jagba was able to see the final bell. As I said, this was a relatively straightforward fight to score. Round 4, Bakoli. Rounds 8, 9, and 10, Bakoli. Rest of them, a Jagba. Simple as. I mean, I would imagine, without seeing, because I haven't seen what rounds the judges scored, I would imagine the two judges who gave it a draw probably gave round number 3 to Bakoli, which I didn't. I gave that to F.A. Jagba because he did better work in that round. I would imagine that that's how you arrive at the 95-95 scorecard. For me personally, I felt that Jagba won the fight. It's one of them, again, where it's close, but you can see, right, he won those rounds. He really did. So, I mean, what do you do now with Martin Bakole? Well, what do you do with him? A Jagba, he can feel a bit hard done by. And actually, as well as that, this was a 10-rounder because originally this was meant to be an IBF eliminator. Had it been a final eliminator, it would have been a 12-rounder. So it was only a 10-rounder. So that really, in many ways, you could say that, actually, with the way a Jagba was fighting, you could possibly say that actually was a saving grace for him, because he looked just like he mentally checked out those last couple of rounds. So, yeah, that's that. Bakole, man, what a fall from grace. Against Jared Anderson, we were talking, and believe me, you know, the way he looked that night, he was a nightmare for anybody. He's gone now from that to taking a KO defeat against Joseph Parker, albeit on short notice, to this. And do you know what I blame? I blame lack of discipline. You know, you're a heavyweight. I get it. You don't have to make weight. But stay in shape. You know? I don't see how that's such a challenge to just stay in shape. You know, you don't have to be fighting. You know, if you're a heavyweight and your best weight is, say, 250, right? Better to stay like kind of 260 something or 270 or low 270. So you're just kind of, you know, going through the camp, you're eating right, and the weight is just coming off naturally. Rather than, you know, oh, great, I weigh 270 for this fight, brilliant. I'm not going to train now for the next 6 months. I'm going to eat myself up to a stupid weight. Then I'm going to have to spend the first 6 weeks of camp just losing this weight. Because it does have an impact, and it does take away from your performance, and I think it did this for Bakole. So those are my thoughts on it. Let me know yours in the comment section below. What both guys do here, I do not know. But let me know yours in the comments. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Peace.